What if the reason your bank account isn't growing has like absolutely nothing to do with your paycheck
Right.
or the state of the economy or
Mm.
just sheer luck? What if the numbers you see on that screen, whether they bring you relief or panic, are actually just a symptom of something else entirely?
It is a really jarring thought to entertain, honestly,
Yeah.
because we're so accustomed to viewing financial struggles as a strictly mathematical problem, money in, money out.
Right, like balance sheets, interest rates, all of that.
Exactly. But when you really strip it down to its core, based on the source material we're looking at today, being chronically stuck isn't about the math at all. It's fundamentally a psychological condition.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We're
Yeah.
taking an intense, almost uncomfortably honest look at the modern mindset and the invisible barriers that keep most people broke.
Yeah, and I think it's important to be clear right up front for everyone listening. Our goal today isn't to give you motivational fluff.
Oh, definitely not. We aren't here to tell you to just think positive thoughts or manifest a sports car. We are here for a truth-driven diagnosis of deeply conditioned thinking patterns.
Right, because we have to reframe our entire understanding of what it means to be quote unquote broke. We typically treat it like a hardware issue.
A hardware issue, like meaning what
Oh, yeah.
exactly?
Well, like as if the machine itself is broken or the external environment's entirely at fault. But the sources point out that it is actually a software issue.
Oh,
It's the programming running quietly in the background of your mind, dictating your choices, your impulses, and your risk tolerance long before you even realize you're making a decision.
I love that framing. A software issue. Because I can promise you, by the end of this conversation, you are going to see your daily habits, your phone, and even your own deeply held concept of safety in a completely different light.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift.
But to really understand why so many of us struggle financially and mentally today, we can't just look at our current budgets. We have to look back.
Way back.
Right. We have to examine the original programming we received long before we ever earned our very first paycheck.
Which takes us all the way back to our earliest days in the classroom. And even in our homes. From a very young age, individuals are actively, methodically taught to prioritize safety over growth.
Yeah, think about how traditional schooling works, or early socialization.
You are rewarded for compliance. You're rewarded for following the rubric perfectly. And, crucially, you are penalized heavily for making mistakes.
You get a big red X on the paper if you try something different and fail.
Exactly. The lesson internalized over decades of this is that failure is dangerous.
Right.
We're continuously encouraged to avoid risks, to follow traditional well-worn paths, and to seek stability rather than to seek opportunity.
Just get a safe job with good benefits, right? That's what we all hear.
Yes, it's baked into our family dynamics, and it becomes the baseline code of our mental software.
Which makes sense on a purely biological and evolutionary level, obviously.
Yeah.
We want children to be safe. We want them to survive. But the way this translates into adulthood is where the glitch in the software happens. It's like, well, it's like we're being taught how to drive a high-performance car, but the driving instructor explicitly tells us to never, ever leave an empty parking lot.
That's a great analogy.
Right. And sure, if you just drive in circles in an empty lot at 5 miles an hour, you are perfectly safe from a high-speed crash. You're totally protected.
But you're not going anywhere.
Exactly. The engine is running, you're burning gas, and you are never actually going to reach a destination.
Yeah.
So are we essentially saying that society is training us to be successful survivors rather than actually equipping us to thrive?
Successful survivors. That is a brilliant way to conceptualize what the source is arguing. Survival is strictly about minimizing threats. Thriving, however, is about maximizing potential.
Okay.
And those two goals require entirely different operating systems. When you are conditioned for decades to prioritize safety and minimize threats above all else, your psychological baseline shifts permanently.
And what's the result of that shift?
Well, the most tragic outcome of this, and the reason so many people remain financially paralyzed, is that we reach a point where our fear of failure becomes actively stronger than our desire for success.
Wait, let me make sure I'm really grasping the weight of that. The fear of failure becomes actively stronger than the desire for success.
Yes.
How does that actually play out in someone's day-to-day life? Like in a practical sense?
Let's quantify it to make it tangible. Imagine your desire to double your income or start a business is a 5 out of 10.
Okay, 5 out of 10.
You want it, sure, but your fear of failing, your fear of losing your perceived safety, of stepping out of that empty parking lot and looking foolish is an 8 out of 10.
Oh, man. Yeah.
When an opportunity presents itself, That 8 will always overpower that 5. You will simply freeze. You won't negotiate the raise. You won't spend the weekend learning a new skill.
Because it's too risky.
Right. You will inevitably choose the known, familiar discomfort of staying broke over the unknown, unpredictable risk of trying to grow.
Because the known discomfort feels like a warm blanket. It's familiar, it's predictable.
It is entirely predictable. And the human brain fundamentally prefers a predictable negative outcome over an unpredictable positive one.
Wait, really? A predictable negative over an unpredictable positive?
Yes. Uncertainty is processed by the brain as a literal threat. So this deeply conditioned think pattern is the foundational layer of why people stay stuck. It's rarely a lack of capability or intelligence. It is an overwhelming, hardwired aversion to risk.
Wow. Okay, so if our brains are already hardwired to freeze when faced with the risk of growth, what happens when you drop that exact same brain into a modern world where escaping that fear takes zero effort?
That is where it gets really dangerous.
Because suddenly, we're not just avoiding risk.
Yeah.
We are actively being medicated against it by our phones.
Okay.
This feels like the point in the text where the modern mindset turns from a cautious crawl into a complete paralyzed trap.
It is the ultimate trap. In modern life, this foundational problem of risk aversion is massively amplified by the technology in our pockets.
Yeah.
We are talking about the endless feed of social media, short-form content, and the sheer ubiquitous availability of instant gratification.
Right.
These aren't just minor annoyances or quirky cultural shifts. The sources argue they are actively rewriting our neural pathways, eroding our discipline, and shortening our attention spans to the point where sustained effort feels physically painful.
Hold on. I have to jump in here and push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because it is incredibly easy to just blame phones and social media for everything wrong in society today.
Yeah.
If I'm exhausted after a grueling 10-hour shift and I sit on my couch to scroll through funny videos for an hour, I'm not avoiding growth. I'm just resting. My brain is fried. How is unwinding at the end of the day keeping me broke?
That is the most common and, frankly, the most logical defense mechanism we all use. It feels like unwinding, it feels like rest.
Right.
But if we look at the neurology of what is actually happening, it's quite insidious. It's not inherently about the app itself, it's about the replacement of effort.
The replacement of effort.
Exactly. True rest replenishes you. Mindless scrolling depletes you while giving you the illusion of an emotional reward.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that. How does looking at a screen replace effort?
Remember the 5 out of 10 desire for success versus the 8 out of 10 fear of failure?
Yeah, the parking lot analogy.
Right. When you are faced with a task that could actually lead to financial growth, say studying for a new certification, building a portfolio, or even just sitting down to strictly budget your finances, your brain perceives the friction of that task.
It feels like work.
It registers the risk of failure. It feels uncomfortable. Historically, when human beings felt that friction, they either had to push through it or sit in the quiet discomfort of their own stagnation. But today, you have an immediate low-effort escape hatch right in your hand.
So instead of confronting the discomfort of trying something new and pushing through the friction, we just hit the escape button.
Precisely. You open an app, and within seconds, your brain is flooded with cheap dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter responsible for motivation and reward.
Right, like the reward for doing something productive.
Evolutionarily, it was designed to reward us for doing difficult, life-sustaining things, like hunting, building shelter, or navigating new territory. Now, we can hijack that exact same reward system by simply moving our thumb. We soothe the anxiety of not moving forward in life with a synthetic sense of accomplishment.
That is terrifying when you put it that way.
Yeah.
We are medicating the anxiety of our own stagnation.
And this avoidance of meaningful, friction-heavy work manifests as procrastination and overthinking.
Overthinking, yeah, I hear that a lot.
Overthinking is just a highly sophisticated form of procrastination. It feels like you're doing something productive because your brain is active, but you're actually just agonizing over the risk of leaving the parking lot.
Right.
And while you're overthinking, what are you usually doing? You're scrolling. You are numbing the fear of failure with the drip feed of digital dopamine.
So the phone isn't making you broke because the phone itself costs $1,000. It's making you broke because it is weaponizing your natural evolutionary fear of failure.
Yeah.
It provides a bottomless, frictionless well of distraction to ensure you never have to face the cold, harsh reality of doing the hard work.
That is the precise dynamic. It's an amplifier for our worst most risk-averse tendencies. And this brings us to the tipping point where this psychological condition actually manifests into tangible, real-world financial stagnation.
How so?
Well, this constant need for soothing and instant gratification leads to a massive behavioral imbalance. It creates a chasm between consumption and creation.
This is the part of the material that hits the hardest for me.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to say, we are distracted, but it's another to look at the economic reality of that distraction.
Right.
Most people spend hours and hours consuming content, but invest almost zero time building their own skills or creating any actual value. It's like we are a society of professional eaters constantly sitting at the restaurant table, and we are completely baffled as to why we aren't getting paid like master chefs.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the modern economy. Think about how the digital economy functions. It is designed to extract wealth from consumers by monetizing their attention. And it rewards the creators who capture that attention.
Yes.
If you are perpetually in the seat of the eater, you are the resource being mined. You are paying with your time, your focus, and ultimately, your potential.
And people will defend their position at that table to the bitter end. They'll say, I'm too busy to cook, I'm too tired to learn to be a chef.
Always.
Let's look at the literal math of this, because the sheer volume of hours is staggering. If someone spends, say, 3 to 4 hours every single day scrolling through feeds, watching videos, or playing games.
Which is average, by the way.
Right. But they simultaneously claim they simply have no time to learn a new skill.
The math is sobering. 3 hours a day over the course of a year is just shy of 1,100 hours.
Wait, 1,100 hours? Just from 3 hours a day?
Yeah, it adds up incredibly fast. And think about the magnitude of 1,100 hours. That is not just a wasted Sunday afternoon. That is a massive structural deficit in your life.
Wow.
In 1,100 hours, you could become highly proficient in a second language. You could learn to write code. You could master copywriting, data analysis, or build the foundation of a side business.
Imagine putting 1,100 hours into learning a high-income skill like copywriting. The financial return on investment on that time could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars over a career.
Exactly.
But instead, those 1,100 hours of potential are just evaporated into a feed. And the literal financial ROI of that scrolling is zero. Or honestly, it's negative because it makes you want to buy things you don't even need.
It is absolutely negative. And here's the most critical part of this dynamic. While your 1,100 hours evaporate into consumption, the people who are creating, the people who are sitting in the discomfort and building skills, are pulling further and further ahead.
Leaving everyone else behind.
This massive imbalance of consumption over creation guarantees that an individual remains stuck in the exact same economic and mental position year after year. They are trapped in a loop.
What's the loop?
They feel unfulfilled because they aren't growing. They escape that unfulfilled feeling through mindless consumption. And by consuming instead of creating, they ensure they remain unfulfilled.
It's a perfectly closed, paralyzing loop. God, that's heavy. But we promised the listener we wouldn't just diagnose the disease and leave them without a cure.
Right, there is a way out.
If staying broke is the result of this very specific set of conditioned habits, an aversion to risk, a dependency on cheap dopamine, and a terminal case of consumption, then building wealth must simply be the adoption of a different operating system.
It is. But to run that new software, you have to fundamentally redefine what wealth actually is. The sources are clear that wealth is not just about hoarding money.
Right.
It is not just a static number in a bank account. If it were, lottery winners wouldn't go bankrupt at the rates they do.
Which goes right back to the very first thing we said at the start of the deep dive. It's not a math problem.
Exactly. Wealth is an architecture. It is defined by a specific framework of decision-making, by a commitment to long-term thinking, and by an insatiable appetite for continuous learning. People who build true wealth have intentionally overridden that childhood programming that demands immediate safety.
I want to really dig into that idea of long-term thinking, specifically the concept of delayed gratification, because it is the absolute antithesis of what we were just talking about with the smartphone.
Completely opposite.
The dopamine hit from a 15-second video is instant gratification. It feels incredibly good right now, but it actively costs you your future. So if the broke mindset is fundamentally about surviving today, like managing your anxiety right this second through distraction, then the wealth mindset has to be entirely about building for tomorrow.
That is the definitive contrast. People who build wealth understand the immense power of delayed gratification. They are willing to sit in the quiet, uncomfortable friction of learning a new skill. When the anxiety of the unknown flares up, they don't reach for their phone to escape it. They lean into it. They embrace continuous learning, which inherently means constantly admitting that you don't know something. And admitting ignorance is deeply uncomfortable for the ego.
It is leaving the empty parking lot and merging onto a busy highway. It's terrifying at first. You might take a wrong turn, you might scrape the bumper, but you are finally actually moving toward a destination.
And the engine that powers that movement forward isn't raw talent or luck, it is consistency. The ultimate secret weapon to escaping the broke mindset is understanding how daily actions compound over time.
We hear about compounding all the time in finance, right? Compound interest in an index fund. But we rarely apply the math of compounding to our own daily behaviors.
But the mechanics are exactly the same. Empty, mindless scrolling is a subtractive habit. It takes your time, it takes your focus, and it yields nothing of value in return. But the daily action of building, of creating, of reading a difficult book, or practicing a new skill, those are additive habits. And just like interest in a bank account, they don't just add up, they multiply.
Wow.
30 minutes of dedicated, focused learning a day doesn't seem like much on a Tuesday. But compounded over 3 years, it results in undeniable, market-valued expertise.
The compounding effect of small actions.
Yeah.
It's so simple, yet it requires so much discipline to execute when the distraction is just an arm's length away.
It does.
So if we look back at the journey we've just taken through all of this, it really is a complete paradigm shift. We've unpacked how our original childhood programming trains us to fear failure and prioritize an illusion of safety above all else.
Right.
We've explored the neurology of how modern distractions weaponize that fear, turning our phones into escape hatches that soothe our anxiety but kill our ambition.
Yeah.
And we've realized that the only genuine escape from this cycle is to shift from being a passive consumer to an active creator, relying on the compounding power of delayed gratification.
It is a profound shift in perspective. And the beauty of recognizing this software issue is that it moves the locus of control away from the economy, away from your boss, and places it directly back into your own hands.
It removes all the convenient excuses,
Yeah.
which is incredibly empowering, but yes, also a little daunting. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought. Something a bit provocative to really chew on as you go about the rest of your day.
Consider this. If every single app on your phone was suddenly deleted tomorrow, no feeds, no videos, no endless scrolls, and you were forced to sit in complete, uninterrupted silence with nothing but your own ambition, what is the very first uncomfortable truth about your life you would actually have to confront?
Man, that is the question to ask. Take that thought with you today. Notice when you reach for that quick dopamine hit. Notice when the fear of the unknown tries to keep you circling the empty parking lot. Because remember, your bank account isn't just a reflection of your paycheck, it is a reflection of your programming. And the good news is, software can always be rewritten. Have a great day, everyone.